My sister-in-law thought it was funny to tell the whole family about the most painful moment of my life, my miscarriage. She laughed while I cried. But what she didn't know, I knew her husband's darkest secret. Stick with me while I share my story, and if it touches you, don't forget to support our channel by hitting that subscribe button, dropping a like, and sharing it with the people you care about. My name is Lane, I'm 28 years old, and I've been married to Cole for 3 years. Cole is 31, hardworking and kind, but he hates conflict. He grew up in a family where keeping the peace mattered more than telling the truth. That makes it easy for people like his sister Mara to do whatever they want without anyone stopping them. Mara is 33, sharp-tongued, and loves to humiliate people. She isn't the type to make small talk or keep things polite. She wants every conversation to end with her laughing and someone else feeling small. Unfortunately, I've been her favorite target since I married Cole. A few months ago, I went through the hardest moment of my life. I lost my first pregnancy. It broke me in ways I still can't put into words. Cole and I grieved quietly, telling only a few close family members. I thought they would respect our privacy. I was wrong. It happened at a family dinner, in the middle of the living room, while everyone was passing plates and laughing. Mara set down her glass of wine and with a smile said, "Well, at least Lane doesn't have to worry about getting fat from pregnancy weight anymore." The room went silent. My heart stopped. Then she leaned back in her chair, smirking, and added, "Oh, come on, everyone knows. She lost the baby. It's not a secret." Her words hung in the air like poison. Cole dropped his fork. His mother gasped. His father coughed awkwardly, trying to change the subject. But Mara didn't stop. She laughed. Actually laughed while I sat there shaking, my eyes filling with tears. I wanted to disappear. I couldn't even breathe. Every pair of eyes was on me, and I felt stripped bare in front of the entire family. The most private, heartbreaking moment of my life had just been turned into dinner entertainment. I pushed back from the table and ran to the bathroom, locking the door behind me. My hands shook so badly I could barely turn the lock. I sat on the edge of the tub and cried until I thought my body would split in two. Cole knocked softly, whispering that he was furious with Mara, that he would handle it. But I already knew he wouldn't. His family had always excused Mara, saying she was just blunt or didn't mean harm. But I knew the truth. She meant every word. She enjoyed breaking me. And as I sat there, wiping my face, something inside me hardened. Mara thought she could throw my pain on the table like a joke. She thought I was weak, too broken to fight back. What she didn't know was that I had something on her husband, Vince. Something she could never laugh her way out of. I pressed my back against the cold bathroom wall, knees tucked close to my chest, trying to silence the shaking in my body. Every sound outside the door felt sharper. Chairs scraping against the floor, hushed voices, silverware clinking. My throat burned from holding back more cries. A soft knock came, then Cole's voice. Low, steady, almost pleading. "Lane, please open the door. I need to talk to you." I couldn't face him. Not yet. My hands were trembling too much. I just whispered, "Not now." There was a long pause, then the sound of his footsteps retreating. Through the thin door, muffled words carried in from the dining room. Mara's laugh. His mother trying to smooth things over. His father speaking in that stiff, dismissive tone I'd heard before. I leaned closer, straining to catch every word. "She didn't mean it like that," his mother said firmly, as though deciding it for everyone. "You know how Mara is." Cole's voice rose. I'd rarely heard him so sharp. "She humiliated my wife. She knew exactly what she was doing." "Don't be dramatic," his father interrupted. "Your sister speaks without thinking. She's blunt, not cruel." Blunt, not cruel. The words sliced through me. They weren't defending me, they were defending her. Again, I covered my mouth with both hands, trying not to sob too loud. I wanted Cole to fight harder, but I also knew his history. Every time Mara pushed boundaries, someone excused it. Every insult brushed off. Every cutting remark explained away as her personality. So what did that make me? Just another person expected to swallow her cruelty while she smiled through it. Another knock at the door. This time firmer. "Lane, it's me," Cole said again. His voice cracked a little. "I can't believe she did that. Please, just come out. We'll go." I stood, wiped my face on the back of my sleeve, and turned the lock. He stepped in quickly, closing the door behind him. His jaw was tight, his eyes red. "Lane," he said, almost whispering. "She's out of line." I told them. I told her. I wanted to leave right then. But he hadn't. I stared at him, silent. He reached for my hand, but I kept my arms folded. I didn't need comfort. I needed dignity, and it was gone. His shoulders slumped. They don't see it the way we do, he muttered, almost apologetic. They think she doesn't mean to hurt people. I laughed bitterly. It startled him. They'll never admit what she really is, I said flatly. Not to me. Not to you. Maybe not even to themselves. He tried to protest, but I shook my head. Don't. You saw her face. You heard her laugh. He fell silent. That was the moment something inside me shifted. Up until then, I had been waiting for his family to finally step up, waiting for Cole to protect me from their blind loyalty. But in that small, suffocating bathroom, I understood. No one was coming to save me. I would have to do it myself. I looked at my reflection in the mirror above the sink. My eyes were swollen, my cheeks blotchy, but behind the ruined makeup, there was something new. Not strength, not yet, but a spark of defiance. I turned back to Cole. She's not getting away with this, I said quietly. My voice shook, but the words felt solid. He studied me, confused. Lane, what do you mean? I didn't answer. Not then, because I hadn't figured it out yet. But I knew one thing for certain. Mara thought she had stripped me down to nothing. She thought her cruelty had left me powerless. She was wrong. I straightened, pulled the bathroom door open, and stepped back into the house. The dining room was quieter now, but Mara's smirk still lingered in the air like smoke after a fire. I sat down, lifted my glass of water, and stared across the table at her. She didn't know it yet, but the balance had shifted. The night after that dinner, I lay awake beside Cole, staring at the ceiling. He had drifted into uneasy sleep, but my mind refused to settle. My thoughts circled around Mara's grin, the way she had relished exposing me. The humiliation still burned, but beneath it, something else pulsed, an urgent need to take back control. That was when a memory crept in. Months earlier, while washing dishes in Mara's kitchen, I had overheard her husband, Vince, talking on the phone in the other room. His tone had been softer than I'd ever heard it, almost tender. He wasn't speaking to Mara, that much was obvious. I'd caught only fragments of the conversation, but two words stuck: Eva and sweetheart. A child's name followed, spoken so quickly I wasn't sure I heard it right. He had ended the call suddenly when Mara walked in, his face snapping back to his usual guarded expression. At the time, I dismissed it. I told myself maybe it was business, maybe a cousin, maybe nothing. I wanted to believe Vince was just another overworked man balancing family life. But now, as the night stretched on and the weight of Mara's cruelty pressed into me, that call resurfaced with new meaning. What if it hadn't been nothing? What if Vince wasn't the faithful husband and father everyone believed he was? I turned the thought over in my head until the first light of morning filtered through the curtains. For the first time since Mara's attack, I felt a flicker of power. If Vince had secrets, they could become my weapon. I started small. Over the next few days, I paid closer attention when Vince spoke. He kept odd hours, claiming long work shifts, yet his phone was never far from his hand. When Mara teased him about always on call, he brushed it off with a half smile. She didn't question him, she never did. She was too busy ridiculing others to notice the cracks in her own home. The more I watched, the more convinced I became. There was something hidden beneath Vince's polished exterior. One evening, I decided to stop wondering. I waited until Cole settled into bed with a book, then told him I needed to clear my head with a drive. Instead, I parked down the block from Vince's office, engine off, lights dimmed, heart hammering. The building emptied slowly. Cars trickled out one by one. Finally, Vince appeared, tall frame moving with his usual steady stride. He climbed into his truck, glancing around as if checking for anyone nearby. I sank lower in my seat and started my car only after his taillights flickered on. He drove away, not toward his house, not toward the familiar route I knew so well. He veered off, taking back streets, moving with a caution that made my pulse quicken. I stayed far enough behind that he wouldn't notice me, every turn heightening the tension in my chest. My palms were slick against the steering wheel. I didn't know what I expected to find, but instinct told me this was no harmless detour. The city lights thinned as we pushed toward quieter neighborhoods. Finally, Vince pulled into the driveway of a small, modest home. The porch light glowed warm against the dark. I parked half a block away, cutting my engine, holding my breath. A front door swung open. A woman stepped out. She was younger than Mara, with gentle features, hair falling loose around her shoulders. She smiled when she saw Vince. Behind her, a small figure darted forward, a little girl, no more than 4 or 5, who squealed, "Daddy," before flinging herself into his arms. The sound carried through the still night, undeniable. Vince knelt, clutching the child, his face lit with joy I had never seen from him at any family gathering. The woman, Eva, I realized, watched them with quiet affection, as though this scene was routine. I gripped the steering wheel tighter, heart pounding so hard I thought it might crack my ribs. It wasn't just suspicion anymore. Vince wasn't the man Mara believed he was. And I had just stumbled upon the one truth that could unravel her entire world. The neighborhood Vince had turned into was quiet, almost too quiet. Rows of small homes sat shoulder to shoulder, their porches lit by single bulbs that hummed against the night. It wasn't far from the city, but it felt like another world, modest, tucked away, ordinary. I eased my car to the curb a short distance behind his truck. The air in my vehicle felt heavy, stifling, and I cracked the window just enough to breathe. My eyes stayed fixed on him as he stepped out, moving with a confidence that told me this wasn't the first time he'd been here. The front door of the little house opened, spilling warm light across the small lawn. Then I saw her. A child burst through the doorway, her footsteps quick, her high-pitched voice cutting through the stillness. "Daddy!" she cried, running across the grass with outstretched arms. Vince bent down, sweeping her up in one fluid motion, his face breaking into a wide, unguarded smile. It was so different from the composed mask he wore around Mara's family. His eyes shone, his body relaxed, and he held the little girl as though she was his entire world. I froze. My hands tightened around the steering wheel, knuckles aching. My chest pounded with disbelief. The woman who followed her out moved slowly, with an ease that spoke of routine. She wasn't surprised to see him. If anything, she looked relieved. She was young, late 20s maybe, with long dark hair pulled into a loose braid. Even from where I sat, I could see the way her expression softened when her eyes met his. She wasn't a stranger. She knew him. She knew him well. Vince lowered the girl to the ground, and she clung to his hand as if she never wanted to let go. The woman stepped forward, her smile tender. He leaned in, kissed her cheek, and brushed his palm against her back before they all turned toward the house together. The image burned itself into my mind. The child between them, his arm brushing hers, the door closing behind them like a picture-perfect family moment. I sat there in the dark, pulse hammering, unable to look away even though the house was now still again. A secret family. There was no other explanation. The girl was his daughter. There was no mistaking the resemblance. The same sharp chin, the same dark hair, even the same way she tilted her head back when she laughed. And the woman, she wasn't just a friend. That warmth between them was the kind that came only from a life shared, however hidden. My stomach knotted. Mara had no clue. I could see it clearly now. She strutted through life certain she was the center of Vince's universe, certain nothing and no one could take her place. But here was proof, tangible, undeniable proof, that she wasn't even the only woman he loved. The thought should have comforted me, maybe even brought a flicker of satisfaction. But all I felt in that moment was shock. Cold, biting shock that numbed my fingers and made it hard to breathe. I leaned back against my seat, pressing my hand to my mouth as if that could steady me. I wanted to move, to drive away, but I couldn't, not yet. I needed to be sure. Minutes stretched out as the windows of the little house glowed softly. Inside, their shadows crossed the curtains, casual and domestic. The girl's small form darted back and forth, while the adults lingered close, moving like people who belonged to each other. I wasn't imagining this. I wasn't wrong. The man Mara paraded as loyal, dependable, and devoted was living a lie so big it could shatter her entire world. And now I knew it. Driving back that night, the road blurred beneath my headlights. My fingers clutched the steering wheel, but my mind wasn't on the lane markers or traffic lights. It was on the little girl who had thrown herself into Vince's arms, and the woman who welcomed him so naturally. I had uncovered something explosive, something that could rip Mara's world apart. Yet the thought of it left me unsettled. Mara and Vince had children of their own, 2 boys who adored their father. If the truth came out, their lives would split in 2. They were innocent, untouched by the ugliness of their parents' choices. The weight of that pressed hard against me. I pictured their faces, laughing at family gatherings, chasing each other across the yard. Did they deserve to lose the father they trusted? Did they deserve the whispers that would follow them if people found out? I gripped the wheel tighter, jaw aching from the tension. For a moment, guilt swallowed me whole. If I used what I had seen, I wouldn't just hurt Mara. I would drag down children who had no part in any of this. The thought twisted my stomach, made me question if revenge was worth the collateral damage. But then, like a splinter I couldn't ignore, another image cut through my hesitation. Mara's smirk. The sound of her laughter when she announced my loss like it was nothing more than dinner conversation. The sting of her voice, mocking the deepest wound I'd ever carried. The memory made my chest tighten. My miscarriage wasn't gossip. It wasn't entertainment. It was my pain, my private grief. And Mara had turned it into a punchline, sitting back smug while I crumbled. She had enjoyed it. That was the part that haunted me most. She hadn't slipped. She hadn't stumbled into cruelty by accident. She had chosen it, savored it, watched me break, and relished the sight. Why should I care about shielding her family when she had shown no mercy for mine? The guilt began to shift, replaced by a cold clarity. Mara had painted herself untouchable for years, weaponizing her sharp tongue, daring anyone to push back. Her children were her armor. People excused her behavior because of them, forgave her because she had enough to handle. But behind that shield, she had destroyed me without hesitation. I sat in the silence of my car long after pulling into my driveway, engine ticking as it cooled. My reflection stared back at me from the darkened window, tired, hollow-eyed, but steady. Mara had crossed a line no one should ever cross. She had left me with scars that wouldn't fade. And now I held in my hands the one truth that could pierce through her smug exterior, the one truth she couldn't laugh away. I whispered it out loud, testing the sound of it. She doesn't deserve protection. The words came out quiet, almost fragile at first. But as they settled in the air, they felt true. Solid. Protecting Mara would mean betraying myself. Protecting Mara would mean allowing her to keep trampling me, pretending there were no consequences. I had lived too long in the shadow of her cruelty, waiting for someone else to step in. No one ever did. I thought again of the girl in the doorway, calling Vince daddy. She wasn't my responsibility. Neither were Mara's sons. The only responsibility I had was to myself, to reclaim what Mara had stolen from me, to show her that she couldn't laugh at my pain and walk away untouched. I pressed my palms flat against the steering wheel, breathing deeply. The hesitation was gone now, replaced with a quiet, simmering determination. Mara wanted to treat my tragedy like a game. She wanted to strip me of dignity and walk away smirking. I was going to make sure she understood exactly how it felt when the ground beneath you cracked open. And this time, she wouldn't be the one laughing. The smell of charcoal drifted across the backyard, mingling with the sweetness of barbecue sauce and cut grass. Folding chairs circled the picnic table. Children darted across the lawn with sticky fingers, and laughter rose into the warm afternoon. On the surface, everything looked normal, cheerful even. But I had walked into that gathering with a purpose. Mara was already in rare form, glass of lemonade in hand, voice carrying louder than anyone else's. She never missed an opportunity to dominate the spotlight, especially when the family gathered on neutral ground like this. I sat beside Cole, my plate untouched, listening to her chatter. She directed stories toward the table, but her eyes kept flicking to me, searching for a reaction. It didn't take long before she found her opening. "So," she said brightly, tilting her head in my direction. "I guess no news from you too?" Still nothing. The conversation around us faltered. Forks paused midair. Cole stiffened beside me. Mara smirked. "You know," she continued, swirling her straw through the ice in her glass, "maybe it's for the best. Some women just aren't built for it. And Cole seems perfectly happy without all the stress." A few forced laughs stumbled out from the other end of the table, the kind people give when they don't know how else to respond. My throat burned, but this time I didn't run. I held my expression steady, breathing slow, letting her dig her hole. "Actually," I said after a beat, my tone casual, "it's interesting you bring that up." Mara raised an eyebrow, lips already curving in amusement. I kept my voice light, almost playful. "Do you and Vince ever think about having another? You know, since the boys are growing so fast." Her smirk sharpened. She leaned back in her chair, basking in the attention. "Another?" she scoffed. "Please. Vince has made it clear he's perfectly satisfied. He doesn't need anyone else, and I don't either. We've got exactly what we want." Her confidence radiated across the table, every word dripping with certainty. She believed every syllable, clinging to it like gospel. I nodded, forcing a polite smile. "Of course," I said softly. But inside, I bit down hard against the urge to laugh. I pictured that little girl's arms wrapped around Vince, the way his face lit up with pride. Mara's words were nothing but fragile glass, and I already knew how easily it could shatter. She kept talking, oblivious to the weight of what I carried. Other couples might chase after big families, but not us. Vince is mine. Always has been. Always will be. Her bragging stretched on, her voice ringing with arrogance, and I let her enjoy it. I kept my posture relaxed, sipping my water, eyes calm. Every few sentences I'd tilt my head, humming as if considering her words, planting tiny pauses that made her push even harder to prove her point. Cole squeezed my hand under the table, misreading my silence as restraint. He didn't realize I wasn't holding back out of weakness. I was waiting, because this wasn't the moment to reveal what I knew. Not yet. This was just the setup. I let Mara paint her picture of a perfect marriage, let her bask in the illusion she had crafted. Every boast she tossed into the air was another thread in the web she was weaving around herself. And I was content to sit there, quiet and watchful, while she pulled it tighter and tighter. When the plates were cleared and the kids begged for dessert, Mara stood tall, glowing from her own performance. She thought she had won, but I had never felt calmer. The trap was nearly ready, and Mara had no idea she was walking straight into it. The dining room smelled of roasted chicken and cinnamon cake. Balloons floated above the table, ribbons dangling down where the grandchildren tugged and giggled. It was supposed to be a celebration, Cole's mother's birthday. Platters of food were passed around, glasses clinked, voices rose and fell in easy chatter. But I had been waiting for this night. Mara sat across from me, dressed in a bright red blouse that demanded attention, her bracelets jingling every time she lifted her glass. She thrived on moments like this, crowds, laughter, the stage of family gatherings. And as always, I could feel her eyes on me, calculating. The meal had been smooth until dessert. That was when she leaned forward, fork in hand, lips curving with mischief. "So, Lane," she said lightly, her tone sharp beneath the sweetness. "Still no bun in the oven?" Cole stiffened at my side. His mother frowned, but no one spoke. Mara thrived on silence. It gave her words more sting. Then she twisted the knife. "Maybe that's a blessing. We all remember how well the last one went." Her smirk widened, waiting for the collapse, waiting for tears. But I didn't give her that. I set my fork down, folded my hands neatly in my lap, and looked her straight in the eye. My voice was even calm. "At least my husband doesn't have another daughter across town." The room froze. Chairs creaked as people shifted, unsure they'd heard me right. Vince's face drained of color. His hand, mid-lift with a glass of wine, stopped and trembled slightly before lowering it back to the table. Mara blinked, startled, then laughed, too loud, too forced. "What kind of nonsense is that?" she scoffed. "Lane, really, you shouldn't make up stories just because you're bitter." I tilted my head, expression neutral. "Stories?" I said softly. "I wonder if Eva would think so. Or her little girl." The laughter died in Mara's throat. Her fork slipped from her hand, clattering against her plate. Cole's mother gasped, looking from me to Vince, searching for denial. His father narrowed his eyes, jaw set, as if bracing for an answer. But Vince didn't speak. He sat frozen, staring down at the tablecloth, his face caught between panic and shame. The silence stretched, heavy and suffocating. I didn't raise my voice. I didn't need to. "Eva," I repeated, the name rolling slowly off my tongue. "She lives in a small white house on Willow Street. Her daughter runs to him every time he pulls into the driveway. Calls him Daddy." A ripple of shock tore through the room. Mara turned toward her husband, eyes wide, searching for reassurance. But there was nothing. His stillness told her everything she didn't want to hear. You're lying," she whispered, her voice cracking for the first time since I'd known her. I leaned back in my chair, gaze steady. "Am I?" The tension was unbearable. No one moved. No one dared to speak. The sound of children laughing faintly in the other room felt cruel against the thick silence here. Finally, Cole's father cleared his throat, but his voice faltered. "Vince." Vince swallowed hard, eyes still fixed on the table. His silence was louder than any admission. Mara pushed back her chair suddenly, the legs scraping harsh against the floor. Her face flushed red, her bracelets clinking as her hands shook. She looked from me to Vince, fury and fear warring in her expression. "You said," she started, but her words broke apart. I didn't need to add more. I had said enough. The balance of power in that room had shifted. Mara's cruelty no longer had an audience. The laughter she used as a weapon had turned into a hollow echo, replaced by the stunned quiet of a family watching her world crack open. The moment shattered like glass under pressure. Mara's chair screeched against the floor as she shot to her feet, face blotched with rage. "You're sick," she shouted, finger jabbing toward me. "You think you can humiliate me in front of my own family? You're lying. Making things up because you can't stand that I'm stronger than you." Her voice rose higher with each word, desperation edging into hysteria. I stayed seated, my hands folded neatly on the table. My pulse hammered, but my voice was steady. "If you don't believe me, we can go right now. I'll drive anyone here to Willow Street. You'll see Eva. You'll see the little girl. No lies. No exaggeration." The room erupted into overlapping voices, Cole's mother crying out, his father demanding answers, cousins whispering in disbelief. The noise rattled the walls. Mara whirled on Vince, her bracelets clinking as she grabbed his arm. "Tell them it isn't true. Say something." But Vince's jaw clenched, eyes fixed on the floor. His silence told the story she couldn't face. "Answer me," she screamed, shaking his arm. He yanked it free, pushing back his chair so violently it nearly toppled. His chest heaved as he finally looked at her, fury and shame carved into every line of his face. Without a word, he turned and stormed toward the door, the slam echoing through the house like thunder. Mara scrambled after him, heels clattering, her shrieks piercing. "Don't you walk away from me. You owe me an explanation." Her voice cracked as it trailed down the hallway and out into the night. The room they left behind was silent except for the ticking clock on the wall. Forks and knives sat abandoned on plates, candles flickered weakly in their holders. The birthday cake, untouched, sagged in the center of the table. Eyes turned toward me. Wide, stunned, uncertain. For years, I had been the quiet one, the target of Mara's jabs, the one who slipped away in tears, the one who never pushed back. They had seen me as fragile, unable to defend myself. But now, sitting there with my spine straight and my hands still folded, I saw their expressions shift. Shock, yes, but something else too. Recognition. They saw that I wasn't fragile at all. Cole's mother pressed her napkin to her lips, trembling. His father leaned back in his chair, rubbing his temples as though trying to make sense of the wreckage. A cousin muttered under his breath, "My God." Cole reached for my hand under the table, his grip tight. For once, there was no pity in his touch, only quiet pride. I didn't speak again. I didn't need to. I had laid out the truth, and the truth had done the rest. The distant sound of Mara's shouting carried faintly from outside, her voice unraveling into raw panic. Vince's deeper tone rumbled back, words indistinct but sharp. The clash between them grew smaller as they moved farther away, until the night swallowed it whole. No one at the table moved. No one dared. They all sat with the weight of what they had just witnessed, the certainty settling in like a storm cloud. Mara wasn't untouchable anymore. The fire she had aimed at me had finally burned back toward her, and there was no laughter left to cover the smoke. The news traveled quickly, though no one said it aloud in front of Mara. Whispers circled through relatives, carried in hushed tones over phone calls and quiet visits. By the end of the week, the story was clear. Vince had packed his things and left the house he shared with her. He hadn't gone to a hotel or to a friend's spare room. He had gone directly to Eva. The choice spoke louder than anything else. Neighbors noticed his truck parked regularly in front of the small house on Willow Street. A cousin admitted she'd seen him walking hand in hand with the little girl outside a grocery store. Each sighting added weight to the truth until it could no longer be dismissed as rumor. Mara's silence became its own kind of confirmation. She stopped answering calls, stopped showing up to gatherings. The woman who once dominated every conversation with sharp remarks and mocking laughter seemed to vanish into her own shadow. Even her children, usually spirited, shuffled through visits with grandparents, their eyes downcast, their mother's absence explained only with vague excuses. Humiliation clung to her like a second skin. For years, she had wielded power over others, thriving on their discomfort. Now she was the one being pitted, the one whispered about when she wasn't in the room. Every sideways glance, every awkward pause at the mention of her name, cut into her pride. I heard from Cole's mother that Mara had tried to confront Vince, demanding he come back. But his answer had been firm. He wasn't returning. He had made his choice. He belonged somewhere else now, with someone else. That betrayal landed hardest of all. For so long, Mara had strutted with certainty, convinced of her control over him, convinced nothing could threaten her hold. Now she was left alone, forced to face the reality that she hadn't been enough to keep him. Her voice, once booming and cruel, had been replaced by silence. The image lingered in my mind. Her at the birthday table, bracelets rattling as she demanded Vince defend her. The same woman now reduced to nothing more than whispers of pity. For the first time, Mara stood in the same space she had forced me into, stripped of dignity, left powerless, her private wounds laid bare for others to witness. I hadn't needed to raise my voice or beg anyone to see her for who she truly was. The truth had done that for me. When I thought back to the way she had laughed while I broke, the memory didn't sting the same way anymore. It wasn't because my loss hurt any less. It was because she finally knew what it was like to be the one everyone stared at, the one crushed under the weight of shame. The woman who had once thrived on turning others' pain into entertainment was now living inside her own humiliation. And there was no laughter left in her. The following weeks passed with an unusual stillness. For once, the air in our lives didn't feel heavy with Mara's voice, her comments, or her shadow looming over every gathering. Cole and I found ourselves settling into a rhythm we hadn't known in years. Quiet meals at home, walks after dinner, evenings spent talking about the future without someone else's drama pulling us apart. I didn't celebrate her downfall. There were no secret smiles, no whispered boasts. I carried myself the same way I always had, calm, steady, measured. The only difference was inside me. A fracture had been sealed. The sting that once gnawed at me every time I thought of her words no longer had the power to reopen. Cole stood with me through it all, more attentive than ever. He no longer brushed off Mara's cruelty as just her being blunt. He finally saw how deep her words had cut, and his steady presence reminded me that I wasn't standing alone anymore. In that, I found strength I hadn't known I still had. The real test came at the next family dinner. The house was the same, the clatter of dishes, the smell of home-cooked food, laughter drifting from the kitchen. But one thing was different. Mara's chair sat empty. No bracelets clinking, no sharp remarks tossed like darts across the table, no smirk aimed in my direction. Her absence spoke louder than her presence ever had. I looked around at the faces of those gathered, and for the first time, I didn't feel small. I didn't feel like the fragile one. There was no pressure pressing down on me, no waiting for the moment she would twist a knife and leave me bleeding in front of everyone. The silence at her end of the table was a freedom I hadn't realized I craved. Peace didn't come from knowing she had been humiliated. It didn't come from Vince leaving her or from the whispers that still followed her name. My peace came from something far quieter. The understanding that she could no longer treat my grief like a spectacle without consequence. That lesson had settled over her like a shadow she couldn't escape. She had always mistaken my quiet for weakness. She thought silence meant I would endure whatever cruelty she poured onto me. But silence is not surrender. Silence waits. It watches. It learns when to strike with precision. And when the moment came, I didn't need to scream. I didn't need to break. I only needed to speak the truth. Sitting at that dinner table, with Cole's hand brushing against mine under the cloth, I realized I no longer carried Mara with me. Her absence was more than physical. It was freedom from the hold she once had over my spirit. That was victory enough. Do you think I did the right thing by standing up and walking away from all that pain, or should I have given them another chance? Tell me in the comments, and don't forget to subscribe for more stories.